Hi everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the BizClik Media Group's Roundtable monthly series. My name is Emily Cook. I am your host or mediator today, and I'm the marketing manager for BizClik. So today the topic is risk and resilience. Obviously over the past year, this has been a topic that has kind of increased in popularity, importance and understanding. And I just want to, before we kind of jump into the topic, give a brief kind of overview about BizClik Media and what we do. So for those who don't know, BizClik is a global digital media company. We specialize in being the corporate storyteller for the world's leading organizations. We're headquartered in Norwich and we have a growing workforce over the past year, actually, I think doubled in size, which is amazing. So we even have remote working employees across the globe, which kind of came off the back of COVID slightly as well. So that's something to touch on. For example, and now diving into the topic slightly, in March 2020 last year, our workforce was sent home due to the rise of COVID cases in England. This was obviously a huge shock to everyone and kind of to everyone's system, and just it changed the way we worked, the way the business ran, and it even changed the way we communicated with one another. We no longer had them fleeting conversations where important information was handled. It was kind of organized meetings and those messages that sometimes, as we know, can take hours to reply to. You know, we've all been there. But along with the pandemic came a huge risk. As we all know, we've seen that coming out of the tail end of COVID now. But all businesses were affected across the globe. But I'm hoping that today we can have some really kind of constructive conversations regarding how risk is handled in business and what it takes to be resilient as a business. Of course, this didn't just affect BizClik, like I said, it was a complete global issue. So we have our four amazing guests today who have joined us from places across the globe. So we have Fraser Gamblin, we have Kyle Rice, we have Seema Iyer and Vennesa Van-Ameyde. So yes, I'm gonna let them introduce themselves and then we're going to dive into some questions. So Fraser, if you could go first, please.
Yeah, no problem at all. My name's Fraser Gamblin. I'm the Director of People and Culture at BizClik Media. Been with the business during the tail end of COVID-19 pandemic, obviously dealing with our future state resiliency plans at this point in time, but going through the process of growing our organisation, coming out of that side of the pandemic and doubling as we go, which is always great, but putting a plan in place to make sure we get a really robust people journey to our people.
Awesome, thank you. And Vennesa, please.
Sure, my name is Vennesa Van-Ameyde. I am our Chief Operations Officer at Kasasa. We are a financial technology company out of Austin, Texas. And you know what, I think one of my big roles is to make sure that we're leading us through a global pandemic as well, you know, and running the daily operations of the company, but it's also other duties as assigned. And so sometimes it's figuring out how to move the company forward and to pivot really quick in real time.
Awesome. And Seema?
Hi, I'm Seema Iyer. I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer for MetricStream. And MetricStream is a company which helps other companies thrive on risk with our GRC products and deep domain expertise and platform.
Amazing. And lastly, Kyle.
Thanks, Emily. So I'm Kyle Rice. I'm the CTO of SAP National Security Services. We're the subsidiary of SAP Software that focuses primarily on the US secure and regulated industry spaces. Actually, one of the best things I get to do as part of my role is I run NS2 Labs, which is actually where I'm sitting today. It's our innovation space where we collaborate with partners and customers to solve some interesting problems.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I can't wait for today's discussion. Obviously, just to kind of jump into things now, to kind of tackle one of the big questions is what risks are we seeing affect business and workforces now, with a specific kind of focus on the fact that we're coming out of the tail end of COVID. If I'd love to direct this firstly at Vennesa, if you could kind of let me know from your business standpoint and how you feel is kind of affecting businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, I don't know that we're really, you know, ready to just say COVID's done with us, right? So for us, it's like, you know, we're in the middle of coming into another wave, we're cresting at the moment. And it's really about how do we manage through and make strategic decisions and being able to evaluate them clearly with a clear head recognizing that we still have a long way to go, and we need to be able to be agile. We need to be really flexible, but we also can't wait for this to be over, because the next thing's going to come, whether that's COVID or something else. And so how do we continue to provide excellent care to our clients and our consumers? In COVID times, what we set out to do was really to have a foundation of 3 principles. It was to keep our employees safe, number one. That was our highest priority. But our second priority was to make sure that we could continue to service our clients with the expectations that they have of us, with a high level of service. And then, our third guiding principle was to do our part to slow the community spread of the virus by being aware and informed, proactive, and agile. And so sometimes that means that, we are not bringing everybody back into the workplace as fast as we thought we would, and sometimes it also means maybe not having a complete shutdown, but being able to bring groups of folks back, or allow certain percentage of capacity in the building to be able to still have meetings, to be able to collaborate as needed, and to find some alternative solutions to continue to be able to operate our business and balance those things to make sure that we can, continue to move our business forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering if Seema, you have anything else to add to that?
Yes, absolutely. Vennesa, you said a very important thing. We just don't know what else is going to happen next. And I think that's been one of our really big focus areas, because we just need to be prepared for the unknown risk. With the digital transformation that's happened, actually, especially because of COVID, the volume and the velocity of just what is called interconnected risk has increased dramatically. So we as a company are really moving, and as well as helping customers move, of course, to being not just proactive, but very, very predictive on what could happen next. And I think it's really changed our mindset in a very, very, very big way, whether it's because of our employees or our processes or with our customers, et cetera. I think it's been a huge shift in our minds.
Mm. I'd agree on that subject entirely. I think for us, the cultural shift as a result of this process, to make sure that our people are at the forefront of communication, it's not just the business strategy and the business plan and all of these sorts of things. How do our people's feedback feed around that, and how safe do they feel in achieving those objectives has been one of the key things that we've had. So, employee tone first, and yes, you have all the stakeholders you need to keep happy, but definitely been able to have people at the forefront of everything we do in BizClik, because we're a smaller team than most, so we can keep that tone very, very close to our people.
And Emily, if I could add just a little something from more the technology perspective, because we're kind of getting this rubber band feeling where we're so close to making it out, we're getting kind of pulled back in, and we're talking about a lot of that from the personnel and how they bring them back, how we don't, and we're going through that at NS2 as well. But really, from the tech and innovation side, which is really more where I'm working, we're boomeranging as well. And in terms of what we're building, what we're trying to do. For example, about 18 months ago, we were working with a pair of partners and labs to create this, return to office capability, integrating health sensors and risk factors and geolocation to kind of knit it all together so you could keep people safe when they came back. About 6 months ago, we started winding it down a bit because it seemed like it was kind of coming a relic, and now we're not going to need that anymore. But now we're getting all kinds of interest again, because I think we're realizing that really no matter what comes next, it's always going to be useful to know where people are at and how they're interacting and how you can help keep them safe. So that's really driving where we're investing. We're coming to this recognition, I think, of the relative permanence of this new state of affairs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved kind of hearing about all different industries and aspects of this topic, because it is just so widespread. It's really fascinating. It kind of leads me on to our next question, which is thinking about kind of the conversation around this topic. I'm kind of curious, Seema, if I could ask you first, how has the conversation around the topics of risk and resiliency in business changed over the past year, now that we've seen the kind of impact of this pandemic?
True. So while we started, and most of us were very agile and managed to get the people working from home. So the safety of the employees was very, very critical in the beginning. And then we started talking about their productivity. And then it was all about IT and cyber risk. Now this topic has become a boardroom discussion, right? We are all taking a very long-term view of this risk. And if I look at most of the companies around us and we see how we are seeing shifts of employees moving from one company to another, right now we're focusing on really how do you keep that culture alive? How do you make sure that the core knowledge of the business is safe and sound with the company because of all these shifts that are happening?
Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering, Fraser, if you had anything else to add to that?
No, I'd agree. I think it's a buoyant market as a result, definitely in the digital space. So it's a war on talent, and I think that kind of organizational knowledge that made you great, and it created that culture and lots of people connecting on a day-to-day. Maybe those that were very much in a collaborative space, they have to kind of reinvent that wheel. They have to have that technology in place to converse in a much more creative fashion now. And I think, from our side, definitely in the UK, I've worked in the Australian and the US markets as well, but in the UK, coming at the tail end, a lot of people are going into that hybrid model, but still trying to transform their culture as it goes. And culture is not going to change, in a 6-month period. It takes years and years and years. But the risk and resilience around that, you've got to make sure we're very agile from that next kind of step phase. So.
And Fraser, if I could add on to what you're talking through, I think the other realization for us is that we really have had to heavily revolve our conversations around employee engagement and tools and how to have that interactiveness, how to stay in touch with our employee base now more than ever. You used to be able to have accidental walk-ins to, with people and collaboration in the break room and in the hallways, and that doesn't exist anymore. So how do you foster that? And technology, at least for Kasasa, has been really important to maintain that visibility, maintain that open communication, whether it's Slack that we're all super familiar with, or things like having daily or weekly check-in points. We have huddles every day with our team. Sometimes they last 5 to 10 minutes, and it's really about what's going on in their personal lives and how are they, holding up emotionally. And sometimes it's about, also talking about the business and how, what hits and misses, what are the things that they're working through or struggling with, how can we help them collectively through that? And we use a tool called Lattice, and it actually has this fantastic feature called the sentiment check-in. And it allows the employee to actually submit, a how are you doing, an emotional health and well-being score, kind of like when you go to the hospital and you see the smiley faces in the scale, right? I think that's, it gives us a KPI for us to evaluate and look at, and a tool for a manager to say, oh, you know what, my employee has been a 1 for the last 2 weeks in a row. Maybe I should have this conversation and unpack this and see what else I can do. Are you okay? What can we help you with? Can we provide more flexibility to accommodate your specific situation? Because sometimes there are dual working households co-spacing in the same room, and that can provide a lot of added stress, and doing something as simple as like changing a shift of a starting point of, when they work. But making sure that people don't feel abandoned, making sure that they feel, supported has been the biggest topic for us. And how do we provide managers with the skills and the tools to do that? Because what I would say is 5 years ago, as the definition of a successful manager was all around outcomes and productivity and how effective are you and how efficient are you managing towards those goals. And now the conversation of the best managers are having with their teams are, how are you doing? Are you okay? They're taking care of their emotional well-being so that they can actually get to the business and the productivity there. And so it's really kind of, I think, changed the conversation around what's needed for leadership over the last year.
So Emily, if I could add almost a little different perspective here, I think one thing to note is there are 2 very different types of companies when it comes to risk and resiliency. All of us on this panel, we work for IT companies. So resilience to us generally means what we're talking about, making sure our people are safe and they're in areas where they can be productive and their headspace is good. If we accomplish this, then our businesses can largely continue. But there's large swaths of the economy that depend on physical supplies for their business. They need their actual supply chain to be operational. SAP runs a lot of the world's logistics. So we've always been focused heavily on supply chain resilience. What happens if there is a tsunami or piracy, or how to detect and avoid counterfeiting, things like that. But we hadn't really focused on, what if a country is simply closed? So we've had to adjust our modeling. I mean, there's some similarities. If a factory is closed for a tsunami or closed because of COVID, I mean, it's still closed. But the longer term impacts and the timing for anticipated reopening are very, very different. And I think it's that timing aspect that has really changed in our discussions about risk and resiliency. It's not like it was where there was a perception of setbacks being temporary. If there's a strike or a weather event that's disrupting my supply, that's okay, but things will get back to normal soon. I think there's increased recognition of these disruptions we're seeing, potentially very long ones, are just part of normal business now. And so you need to have your alternatives lined up ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to kind of see these different perspectives come into it, and kind of thinking about, obviously, Kyle, your kind of input there was kind of prided away from culture slightly, which is fascinating, because obviously risk and resilience, these are topics that are spread across every operation in every business, and I think it's important that we consider that some businesses like retail or things that dependent on supply chains are kind of effective immediately, and obviously that's a worldwide scenario now, and kind of jumping back to what we were saying earlier in Vennesa, I kind of want to ask, how important is it that businesses are prioritizing people, and obviously with these IT companies we work at, these digital media companies, people isn't now kind of taking over as a priority and making sure that well-being is up there. And I want to know, kind of, is there any examples you guys have at your businesses where you're kind of checking in with your employees, and you're maintaining a strong culture for the sake of your people? So I'm wondering if, Vennesa, you can kick that off for me.
Yeah, I think one of the blessings in the last year, if you would, is being able to really see people for who they are. And, I think when we used to work in an office together, you were really focused on your business, and now you're being invited into people's homes. You see them for who they are. You see their fur babies, you see their kids sometimes streaking Zooms in the background, and you realize, like, it's a level playing field. It's a great equalizer, I think Zoom is. And I love that so much, because it gives us this perspective that maybe we didn't have before. And it gives us maybe, I think, some encouragement to recognize the compassion and kindness that we need to have every day, because more so than ever, you can kind of see the stress people carry with them. And I think it's totally possible to assemble a team that is going to work hard for you if you're keeping them first and foremost. If you're thinking that they're your highest priority and you're working hard for them, then they are going to reciprocate that. And you don't do it because you want that out of them. You do that because it's the right thing to do. And people don't just need business leadership from you, they need emotional leadership from you too. And I think that, seeing that, being present, being open to having conversations, being, open to checking in on them is extremely important. And culture has always been a big thing for Kasasa. We've been one of the best places to work in Austin for 6 years, and we want to continue to do that. And this year was really hard, but I think our employees really responded in kind to say, thank you for looking out for us, and not just the bottom line. Thank you for caring for us in a way that, they were, I think, it caught them off guard that we really, before we focused on the business, we focused on their well-being, and that meant the world to them, and means the world to me that we would be allowed to do that. So,
wow, that's really interesting to hear, Kasasa. So about Kasasa, it's one of the things that we've seen is that empathy has gone a very long way. Managers, employees with each other, it's really gone in a long way. And over the last few months, MetricStream actually decided to really look at our own culture and say, what do we really now stand for? And in fact, we've come up with 3 things. We're talking about growth, we're talking about collaboration, and now we're talking about disruption. And those have become our core values. And disruption actually has turned out to be a more positive word than we can think about. How do we really help our employees, break through a plateau in their lives, break through a plateau in their careers, and how do they disrupt, in a way, their trajectory in a more positive fashion. But it's all about growth. It's all about collaboration, Vennesa, as you're mentioning, right? Really showing employees that we care and we collaborate and you can go across boundaries regardless of where you are, because it's now a really level playing field for everyone.
And Emily, if I could add on to Vanessa's earlier point about these almost accidental cultural benefits, like we went down the Zoom path because we had to, but to Vanessa's point, you learned a whole lot about people and people felt more open, and it's just this great cultural benefit there. We see that as well kind of from the innovation perspective. Many of the things that we've done just to keep moving forward have actually been really beneficial to our culture. An example of this is our hackathons. We run these in labs as a means to bring folks together, rapidly solve some problems, and come up with new ideas. Traditionally, we would do these for about 3 very long days in a single location. Obviously, we couldn't do that now for the last year and a half. So the hackathons we've done during COVID have been virtual, and we stretched them out over about 4 weeks because people had responsibilities at home, and you can't really dedicate the time. But what happened is, because they were virtual and because there was this more relaxed schedule, we got participation from lots of different parts of the company that had never participated in a hackathon before. So that was fantastic for building the company culture. And from the innovation perspective, these different perspectives that we got really brought some interesting ideas to the table. So it was great for culture, it was great for the business, but it was all just kind of things we had to do to be productive, but had all these wonderful ancillary benefits as well.
Yeah, great point. And I'd definitely like to hook back to Sayer's point in terms of how the cultural design of the business has kind of evolved for us as well. So, we talk about disruption, but we talk about innovation in the same piece. We choose to kind of go on the innovation collective intelligence piece, but harboring that collective intelligence and collaboration has been one of the things that we've really tried to nurture now. I think, we have evolved, and I know we're all in different parts of the globe at this point in time, but definitely in the UK, to be able to have that little bit of hybrid working where we've got some in the office and able to get around that table and have that traditional workforce feeling and cultural design, but also to have the flexibility. It's given our proposition for our people that much greater sense of organicness. Many will just shift back into the office environment, many will stay remote, but giving the person that bleeding edge opportunity to say, this has never happened, we're on board with you, we're making these decisions that we've never had experience of before ourselves. So how does it look for you, and how can we get to that end goal, and how can we better connect you with those values and with the mission through agile working and whatnot. And I think that's been really, really important for us. So we're seeing the benefits in different ways. The proposition is becoming more innovative. Our designs are becoming more eye-catching, and that's something that we'd love to see as a result of that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you everyone for your answers for that one. Something that this next question, I think, is a bit of a tricky one, because obviously we are in different, at different parts of the world. We're still at different stages of the pandemic. So kind of using the term status quo is kind of maybe subjective, but I wanted to ask, how successful have businesses been in returning to what we call the status quo, or to the new normal? And what can we expect to happen in the future? Obviously, kind of looking at this through the lens of people and business, where do we think the future of businesses is now that we're coming out of the pandemic? So Kyle, if you'd like to kick this one off for us. Sure,
thanks, Emily. So I think well, obviously we'll all agree that we'll never go back to quite the same situation as before. There's going to be increased virtualization. There's going to be remote work. We've seen the benefits there. We've seen the flexibility aspects, and I don't think we're ever going back. But one thing to keep in mind, and this is one notable angle that we do have at NS2, is we have a significant percentage of employees and customers who work in secure facilities and simply have to go to the office. And they're always going to have to, in order to be able to support their mission. And one of the things we struggle with, and we need to make sure we do a really good job on, is to be very careful not to let those employees either feel excluded or that they're being treated unfairly. So this need to be very fair to different categories of employees who are at different job categories and different phases of their lives is going to be a very key consideration for all of us going forward.
Kyle, if I could just build up on that is, we've all learned how to work from wherever we feel we are most productive, whether it's the home or somewhere sitting in a park or just in the backyard or whatever, right? We've all learned that. So there's a very fundamental question we are asking ourselves. So why do we go into the office anymore? And of course, I belong to an IT company. We have the flexibility of working from anywhere. But one of the things I've realized is, going to the office, I'm really going there for a social fix, for collaboration, because work, I can do it from my house.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole concept, I'm even wondering, do we call it return to the office? Is office really a term, or is it more of I'm using the word collaboratory, right? Because you're collaborating, it's a lab, that sort of a thing. And we have to learn how to, work in that environment yet again. We just learn how to work the Zoom calls. Emily, when you started the call, you said, oh, we know how Zoom works. And I'm thinking, we know how Zoom works in the virtual environment, but how is it going to work in this hybrid environment we are heading towards for sure?
Mm.
Yeah, I think if I could add to that, one of the challenges is that hybridization of the workplace, right? And how do you make sure people don't feel left out? How do you really build what we're calling a remote first workplace, where we still have an office presence, but everything that we do, every meeting that we provide and be a part of is designed for the virtual employee. So that, if you're in the office, you're calling in from your desk, or if you're in a meeting room, you're making sure that your Zoom is connected, and we use something called an owl that allows everybody's face to be seen and heard when when they're speaking, and trying to have that, because you can't end up with two classes of citizens inside your company. The people that commute and come in and take that risk, and the people that stay home, or the people that are, just not in a close proximity, because we've also allowed people to disperse. We've also said, hey, you are no longer tied to headquarters, so go and, move to Colorado or Idaho. And so, you want to make sure that they still feel included in that. And so I think it has to be very purposeful. You have to be really thoughtful about how you lead these meetings, and how you create opportunities for people to build relationships, because it's not just for your 30s anymore, in a break room. So whether that's creating a trivia night and people interacting on their Zoom screens through trivia, or whether, you can still do talent shows, you can still do fun things. We've had mixers where we send out cocktails to teams, and they're creating their own cocktails, and they're doing it together. It does take more work on the part of leadership to, still bring people together. But I think you have to really be thoughtful about what is your mission? What are you going to do? And it can't be an accident. It has to be, it has to start at the top. You have to really be thoughtful and planful about what kind of culture you're going to create.
Mm-hmm. And jumping on top of that, Vennesa, I think it's got to be that compelling message, like you say, and it's got to really breed that connectivity. And like I said earlier, I think it's about getting your people involved. How do you get communication, flexibility, and connection all in a bowl and stir it together so it works ultimately for every single party? And I think a lot of people are still in that survivor syndrome kind of mentality as businesses. Some are trying to consolidate, some are trying to obviously deal with hyper growth, because some people have obviously prospered in the pandemic. But at different levels of speed and different levels of culture, I think to get that right will be, quite a compelling aspect to connect your people with. It's not something that happens overnight, but I think for us, we're still in design, and we're still somewhat where we're trying to get to is redesign what it is to feel like post-pandemic in the UK, though there is still the Delta variant, it's very clear. We're just trying to make sure that every step of the way we're getting people in, and that will iteratively change over time. There'll be an inherent strategy, but we'll iteratively change that as we go, so people feel better connected.
I think that flexibility and that adaptability is going to be key. I think we need to create spaces where our people can give us that feedback, and tell us what's working for them, what's not working for them. And forums like this, Emily, I just want to also take a moment and say thank you for hosting, because this allows us to share ideas and, and to bounce topics off of each other and see what's working. And hopefully we can take something back to our companies as well, and to try new things. So I'm grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. I really appreciate your feedback, and I love doing things like this anyway. It's really important, as you say, kind of to build that culture. And something I just wanted to touch on slightly as we start to kind of wrap up is it'd be silly to not mention technology with, at the end of this, because the companies that we all work in, and just kind of some of the topics that are coming up today, and how kind of technology has assisted us majorly during the pandemic. And I just wanted to kind of start with Kyle here, because obviously where he works and kind of what he deals with, I'm wondering if you can kind of give us a small insight into how technology kind of benefited you and your business in terms of kind of culture and people during the pandemic.
Sure. So I guess one of the big things is we always had this concept of because we're a development company, of doing remote development and doing those, and people working out of their homes and developing not in a single location. That said, we still have large swaths of the company that would work together. But what that meant, though, is we had the infrastructure already in place for us to do that kind of purely virtualized engagement and purely virtualized development, purely virtualized moving forward. So what that meant is we had something to catch people. So when people, for example, I talked about our folks working in secure facilities, there was a period there where the government kind of shut them down, and they were kind of like hanging around the house for a couple of months, which is never a good state for people, just because they're kind of adrift. But because we had this infrastructure ready there, we could catch them and say, okay, we have these projects over here we're working on, and we're trying to build these products. You've got some furlough time from the government, here, just come jump in and go to work. So it keeps people feeling like they still have a place to play, and they still have a part to play, I should say, in the company, and they have they're bringing value even in those early kind of uncertain times.
So Kyle, I know you're from SAP, so I would like to add that, we took this time over the last few months to actually put in an SAP system for HRIS because I know, because this was a time we just had to become more disciplined. And I think that's what this taught us, just the discipline to document everything, to use our tools well, whether it was a workflow system or whether it's a knowledge database system or HRIS or finance, etc. This has really taught us that to be resilient, we just needed very, very solid documentation and better usage of our tools and technology.
I love that so much. I think one of the additional things that we've been able to do is to really focus on what matters and to, look at it from a Pareto principle perspective. I think most people are familiar with the concept of Pareto principle, 80% of the world's wealth controlled by 20% of the population, but the same thing is also true at work. And, 80% of your activity is generated by about 20% of your clients, whether that's your internal or your external clients. And, you can kind of then rank your activity, rank your focus, and really decide, like, are the things that you're doing on a daily basis, is it supporting your strategic goals and objectives for 3 to 5 years from now? And if you're not, if there's waste in the system, if there's pork-barrel spending in your budgeting process, now is the time to look at that and say, like, hey, maybe this doesn't belong in our roadmap for the next quarter, for the next year. And for us, it's an opportunity for looking critically at our business, because we're never going to have a moment where things just press pause and it's magical and you can stop doing what you're doing. It is like doing construction on a 737 while it's in flight. That's what the pandemic has felt like. And I think that that's also what we are going to continue to feel like as we move our businesses forward, using these moments as an opportunity to figure out what should we be doing, what else could we be doing better, how do we focus on continual improvement, whether it's utilization of technology, as you said, or making sure that we're focusing on the right business goals and objectives to support our long-term vision.
Definitely, and so your point in terms of standardization, getting documentation, we've implemented many project management tools, but Trello and Monday.com are always the useful ones. Just having that core depository that gives you that continuity of life cycle. We know the stats of how long it's taken in terms of our people to look for information and how much downtime that brings. But I think one thing in terms of technology for us is communication, or organic communication. I think, we mentioned Slack earlier. Pre-pandemic, everyone was leaning over the desks and talking to their teams and doing stand-ups and wash-up sessions and whatnot, and project reviews. Having that continuity of communication, but creating communities was really key for us. So, whether that's lost in the email chain, all of those things that you wish to rely on previously, us to have that consistent stream of communication, creating a little bit of collaboration, creating different chat rooms for different things, like we say, we're getting exposed into people's personal lives for working remotely. Why not give them those opportunities to talk about the things they want to talk about rather than just work? And that was the most exciting piece, to see that really I say snowball, but cascade across the business and really create some authenticity.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously working at BizClik, I've seen the kind of way that we're introducing culture through kind of just celebrating successes, whether that's across our socials or internally, and things like that. It's sometimes it's even just the little things that are helping bring people closer together. And unfortunately, it sometimes does take a disaster to bring people together, I hear people say. So yeah, just to wrap things up, thank you everyone. I wonder if anyone has any final thoughts or just any kind of anything they want to say. This conversation is always open, and I want people to kind of watch this and hopefully take away some thoughts, some insights, and gain value, and then feel like they can take away and share more information, whether it's on their socials, on LinkedIn. This is discussion that I think is extremely fascinating and probably will be a core operation for businesses over the next few years, right? So if anyone has any final thoughts, feel free, and kind of let people know where they can find you, or where they can contact you if they like. So does anyone want to have any final thoughts?
Sure, I'll go. I'll take this opportunity to again say thank you. For me, my final thoughts on all this is that our community is the most important thing. At Kasasa, our mission is actually to help serve our communities, and we do that by serving our community financial institutions and credit unions. But it's also the community that we create inside the businesses that we operate that matter the most. And we have an opportunity to take care of each other. We have an opportunity to love on each other, to help each other through this, to take arms with our brothers and sisters and recognize that nobody's in this alone. And, and really to try to help lift us all up and, provide that hope, provide that beacon of light, that work can really also be that inspirational source for you, and it doesn't have to be a drain. It really can be for me. It's a source of inspiration, a source of taking and owning my power back in a moment sometimes where we do feel helpless. But this community is incredible, and just seeing this played out even here today, where we're so willing to share and be giving of ourselves and ideas to other people. I'm incredibly grateful for the time spent with my colleagues here. My Twitter is Vennesa V and so if you ever want to follow, I'm totally on social.
Right.
And Emily, that obviously. Oh.
Go ahead, Kyle. Go ahead.
All right. I prefer not to follow Vennesa there. That was pretty inspiring right there. But plug from my perspective, we are continuing to work with partners and customers, trying to make new projects and make new products that we can work on together to keep moving the ball forward. So if you're interested in anything we've said today, just reach out to me at ns2labs.com, and we can do some interesting things together.
Right. Firstly, thank you so much, Emily, for bringing us together. And just my final thought would be that people can be very resilient. I think what we need to make sure is that as leaders, we're very transparent with them and can build a community. And MetricStream, of course, is there for helping businesses thrive on risk as well. So feel free to reach out to me via email or LinkedIn, and I'd love to carry on the conversation.
Awesome. And Fraser, anything else to add just from a BizClik perspective?
From a BizClik perspective, I think I'd like to thank our guests today. It's been really, really insightful from my personal point of view, but also from a business. And I hope lots of external businesses take some learnings and some inspiration from the conversations. This is exactly what we're about in terms of BizClik Media. I think we're wanting to have those compelling conversations that will really influence and put perspective for outside organizations and people, whether that be from, joining a business, running a business, every single layer. We want to really, really give some insight into the industries and how they've reacted to these situations. So I really appreciate your time. As I say, I'm on socials as well. LinkedIn is my preferred at this point in time. So Fraser Gamblin, and you'll find me there. But thank you again for attending, guys.
Yeah, and obviously a huge thank you from me. Today's been extremely fascinating. Thank you everyone for your time. And like I said, this conversation, I'm happy to continue it. My socials are Emily Cook on LinkedIn as well. And obviously we're doing these monthly roundtable series now. So I hope everyone stays tuned. I hope everyone enjoys. So brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much everyone. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Stay safe. Thank you.